Here's something you definitely don't care about. Philip Hronek was signed by the Canucks yesterday to an 8-year extension with an average annual value of $7.25 million. If you know who Hronek is and you don't hail from British Columbia or at least have a summer home there, then yikes. Good morning to you. Good Thursday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Penguins. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into football and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Pirates in the same place that you found this. Hronek's a really good player. I'm not making light of him. Produces a lot of points, 48 of them this past year for Vancouver, 5 goals and 43 assists. He gets overshadowed there by Quinn Hughes and all of the forwards, including Pittsburgh's own JT Miller up front. Good hockey player. The reason that I'm referencing this news from yesterday and singling out Hronek is that his extension, the term, and the dollars are probably something of a new bar in the NHL. Not that he's anywhere near the highest paid defenseman or anything, but what he does, I believe, what this contract does that Hronek's agent and Patrick Allvin signed out there is to take, well, let's localize this. It makes Marcus Pettersson very expensive. Okay? That's the best way to put it in terms that you might care about. Because Pettersson has one more year on his current contract, and he gets paid a little bit more than $4 million on it. Now, at the time it was signed, meaning in Pittsburgh, by Jim Rutherford, there were a lot of people who panned it, and it was like too much, and why would you pay him that much for that long? It was a 4-year deal. And all Pettersson has done in the interim is, at least in my opinion, grossly outplay the contract. He's been outstanding and never better than he was this past season. Anybody who's listened to this program for any length of time can attest that I've got Pettersson at a really, 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 really high shelf for how I feel about him, both on and off the ice. He might have been the Penguins' second most consistent player behind Sidney Crosby. That's over the scope of the entire season. So the question is, what does Kyle Dubois do? No executive ever likes to acknowledge that somebody else's contract somewhere else in the league sets a bar. But every agent does it, and every agent makes sure that their clients know all about it. And you'd better be sure that, well, even between now and let's say it takes another few months for the Penguins to even broach an extension with Pettersson, there might be more contracts that are signed that either follow Hronek's lead or leapfrog him. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for all your summer sports needs this season, from Major League Baseball, golf, NHL, NBA playoffs. Get the latest odds and lines, including all team matchups, player props, odds on just about everything that's out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. Pettersson is not an old dude. Turned 28 just last month. He plays a style that you'd like to think would hold up well over the years. So smart. Not exactly the world's fastest guy in the first place. Definitely not the world's strongest guy. So maybe that would work well with aging if you go long term. But well, what I do know to date is that Dubois hasn't approached Pettersson or his agent regarding an extension. And I don't have to guess at that. I've been told that directly. Now, to reiterate, there's a full year remaining on his contract. Nobody has to do anything. But as we've seen in other cases, the closer you get to free agency, the closer that becomes the reality. And when you're looking at a team in the age bracket of the Penguins, if you're going to be committing something, at the Hronek level or anywhere in that stratosphere, then you're going to be keeping Pettersson into his mid-30s. And even though he'd be in his mid-30s while almost all, certainly, of the current guys who are in that range for the Penguins will be gone, in some cases long gone, it still doesn't exactly feel like building from youth. If it's me, and this is only because I'd be the worst general manager ever, I absolutely do it. But I do it because I think the world of the guy, okay? That's why I would be the world's worst. I think there's something that everybody could learn from him. He's the most eager defenseman when it comes to teaching and exchanging ideas, espousing strategy, focusing on team first. That is totally 28. That's who he is. I'd do it. But again, I'm not that person in that position. And if I'm Dubois and I'm armed with a lot more information, not to mention analytics and everything else that he's privy to, my first priority before getting into anything related to Pettersson is to at least try to assemble some sort of vision for what the next 4, 5, 6 years might be. And you'll notice that I'm going past what I think would be a reasonable endpoint for Sid's career. Tough job. I know I've been critical of Dubois. I stand by the criticism. Feel like he made some ill-advised moves last summer. But man, it's a tough task. When we come back, J1Q. Today's J1Q comes from Sam, who says, DK, how do you feel about Jacob Markstrom joining the Devils? I find it more difficult to realistically see the Penguins in the wild card race next year if they don't have top 3 goaltending in the Metro. Glad to have you back. Thanks, Sam. Markstrom going to the Devils in a trade yesterday. A couple trades. Another one also involving goaltending. Darcy Kemper being sent by the Capitals to the Kings for, pardon my laughter, Pierre-Luc Dubois. Do these teams not watch PLD in action, or should I say slow motion, depending on his mood? How is there a market for this guy? Never mind a repeated market. But yeah, I have a couple things to say here. One is that the Penguins players have an interesting outlook on Markstrom, and this goes back to his time with other teams. I remember Phil Kessel once telling me that this guy would just give them fits, and they would all talk about it. And Sidney Crosby sitting at the next stall. This was actually after a game in Vancouver a few years back, and Sid was nodding. He's just a big dude, covers a lot of net, doesn't give you all that much. And when he's sharp, when he's on his angles, he can feel like he's unbeatable. The Devils, no question, needed to stabilize that position, especially if they're going to continue playing anything remotely resembling the style of play that they had under Lindy Ruff. Of course, Sheldon Keefe is now the coach there, but having coached Toronto, that's probably the same way he's going to attack things in Newark. So you need somebody back there to make the big saves. You need somebody back there to stop the odd man breaks that you allow, because if you're playing 4 odd man breaks, you're probably going to be giving up odd man breaks. So probably a necessary move for the Devils, who did send out a high first-round pick to get this guy. Now, to your other point about the Penguins' goaltending rank within the Metro, everyone's going to pump up Igor Shesterkin, and I get that, especially coming off the fine playoff that he just had. And speaking for myself, I'm always going to be a little bit guilty of overweighing what I see from a player in person versus whatever their statistics are or whatever it is that they might do in other games in general. Shesterkin's immensely talented. He's no doubt the class of the division at his position. But when I think of the rest of the division, Carolina, I keep knocking the Hurricanes for not taking goaltending seriously, and that's still applied. You're not going anywhere with Frederik Andersen. The Islanders have Ilya Samsonov. Samsonov is another one of those guys where I feel like when I've seen him, he hasn't necessarily been at his best, but I'm aware of how others see him and how they feel about him. And beyond that, look, not to be mean or whatever, but who else are we talking about? Meaning that it'd be better than a good version of Tristan Jarry. You know, the version of Jarry that you like to see, the version that's competitive and doesn't keep losing his starting job to his own backups. It sure isn't the Flyers. Carter Hart could be spending next season in jail. It sure isn't Elvis Merzlikins in Columbus. So this is so much just a Jarry discussion, really, isn't it? I know that's where you wanted to send it anyway, but I'm not the one to figure out how to put that Humpty Dumpty back together again, presuming he ever was a complete piece. I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Penguins. We're going to do another one of these tomorrow.